Adrian N. Breitfelder, City Clerk, you are hereby directed to call a special session of the City Council to be held on Tuesday, January 16th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. in the historic Federal Building for the purpose of conducting a work session on Carnegie-Stout Public Library's Space Needs Assessment.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to a special session of the Dubuque City Council for January 16th, 2024. As a reminder to viewers and listeners, due to the nature of tonight's meeting topic, public input is not accepted. However, you may contact the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/council-contacts. Attendance for the session is as follows. Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Council members Farber.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Roussel.
Here.
Sprank.
Here.
Wethel.
Here.
City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
Senior Council Lindahl.
Here.
And I will just note that Councilmember Jones is also present. Our work session topic is Carnegie-Stout Public Library Space Needs Assessment. I will turn it over to Carnegie-Stout Public Library Director Nick Rossman.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Nick Rossman. I'm the Library Director at the Carnegie-Stout Public Library. Presenting with me today is Christy Monk, who's here on a dual role. Christy is a trustee from the Carnegie-Stout Public Library Board and is also an architect with FEH Design who helped with this project.
You're taking all my lines, Nick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just real quick, I want to do just an overview of what we're going to talk about tonight. So Christy will introduce the FEH design team, talk a little bit about why the library wanted to do the space needs assessment. We'll take a look at the process, review the results from the public input and the staff input and everything, and then kind of talk about what we've done so far and the next steps as well. And then we'll have some time for comments and questions at the end. So.
My goal is to talk the whole time so that then there's only 2 minutes for questions. I'm kidding. This is just, sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm Christy Monk with FEH Design, architect and library board member. So thank you for having this work session. As an introduction to FEH Design, the Dubuque office opened in 2011, but we have been in continuous operation since 1898. So we celebrated our 125th anniversary last year. Hopefully you guys came to our chamber event with the food truck, because that was quite the party. We consider ourselves library experts, but with 150 plus libraries by our principals, I think that positions us nicely as library experts, so to speak. Let's see. Again, I'm Christy, and with me I have Emma Kuhlman. You want to wave, Emma? Okay, yes, big wave. Okay, and Kevin Epperly, our president and library expert. And then on this project, we also had Bill Wilson, a library planner. He is on our staff as well. So he served as the librarian for the state of Wisconsin and works nationally. So we used his knowledge on this project.
And then this is just a picture of some of the staff at the library, and also in attendance, Victor Lieberman is our board president, is here as well. So, and I'm not sure if we have anybody else watching online at all. So.
Is that you? Are you Batman?
I am not Batman in that photo. That's somewhere else. So just a quick overview of how we got to why we decided we wanted to do this space needs study. So in 2022, the Board of Trustees approved a 5-year strategic plan that would take us from 2023 through to 2028. And this was completed with a lot of input from the public in the form of several focus groups over a weeks-long process. And some of the comments we received during those input sessions, just kind of were general comments about the physical space of the building, the collection, et cetera. And then one of the specific goals for the 5-year plan was ensuring that the library had an effective and attractive facility. And then while it really could be tempting to just have staff develop plans to alter the space, we really felt that because of the historic aspect of the building and some of the complications of having the 2 separate buildings that were built at different times that are merged into one, just thought it would be a really smart decision to hire a professional team that could assist us in the process of evaluating our space, developing a plan that could be implemented. And so we developed an RFP that went out to several vendors that do this for libraries and public libraries across the nation, and they were made publicly available through the library's website, through the city's website, and in the end, FEH Design won the bid, and from there the process began.
Okay. Okay, I just would like to note that as a board member, I was not part of the RFP process, nor did I vote on the final selection, so just wanted to clarify.
And then some of these next few slides here, just examples of space designs in some refurbished library settings. And one of the things you'll notice is through a lot of the pictures, you'll see very few photos that have books in them. And really, while books are arguably one of the, if not most popular and important resources that the library has to offer, it's really also very far from the only service that we have to offer. Our makerspace has seen excellent usage growth over the past year and was really also a regular discussion point as we were going through the public input sessions for the strategic plan, but also as part of the space needs process as well, which...
So everybody's been to the library, right? I'm just like setting that as the baseline, okay? We've all been in there. And you might note that we go back to that, like, there's a fair amount of color, there's interest. It's a little bit different than what we have. Shorter shelves are becoming more of the norm, more of a merchandising feel for, book displays, for popular materials. Smaller study rooms. Does the library have a study room? It's a quiz. There's one room that you can check out on the main level that had a cat incident, if I remember correctly, a while back. So it did. Surprise! I distinctly remember that's when we instituted the service animal policy. There's one study room, and the historic building is full of all those hard materials that echo, and then there's an opening in the floor. So my understanding is if you're at the reference desk, you can hear pretty much every private conversation that happens on that half of the building on either level. So softer spaces, partitioned spaces. Even if it's not a full partition, you can see the center upper window or upper frame has stained glass as partitioning the seating areas, which, you know, if we had a lake view, maybe we'd want to do the same thing. Easily divisible community spaces, booths for teen, different kinds of meeting spaces. You miss a picture?
Did I go that one?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I'll just keep talking, that's fine. No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Okay. So, conceptual planning process. What does it look like? First, my first is always the facility assessment, but I'll talk about that second. So we conduct a space needs assessment. We work with our library planner to determine how big should the library be. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. And then we have a facility assessment that looks at the existing buildings and what level of investment do those existing buildings, like what's the library going to require in the next 10 years for a facility investment. And then we worked with the public, thank you, on coming up with different conceptual designs. Everybody got the giant packet, right? Okay, did you read like the first 4 pages and then the last 2 pages? I should have given you the Cliff's Notes that like the first couple and then the last couple were important, but, okay. Space needs assessment. Are you talking about this one or am I?
Yeah, I think
It's me.
a little bit.
Okay. So Bill zoomed in and we met with all of the management staff, I
I
think.
think we have, is this the old thing?
Is it different? Did I print out the wrong one?
Maybe. Okay, no, we can just go from here.
Okay.
Which slide? I have slide 12 if you want me to talk about that.
Okay, well, that's next. Okay, well, I'll take you quickly through the, I'm not fighting for
Yeah.
speaking time here, guys. The space needs assessment, we worked with Bill Wilson, the library planner. We look at service population, so the community and then outside beyond the city limits, the individuals we serve. We come up with service population and then that impacts collection size based on community growth. Now I know GDDC has some pretty lofty population growth targets. Don't think we quite used those, but came up with a 20-year horizon for population growth that influenced the collection size, and then we documented the existing spaces, and then we met with staff and tweaked things as we met with the public. What's missing in the library? What does staff want to see? Does staff have sufficient workspace? Do we have those study rooms? Does the large meeting room sufficiently fit the parties that are looking for space. Yeah, what's missing? How is the collection changing? How might we make the collection space more flexible? So in the future, if a certain collection like the CD audiobooks goes away, is that positioned in a manner where you can easily replace it?
So over a couple of different meetings, library staff sat with Bill Wilson, and we went through, this is a small portion of the kind of a larger spreadsheet, which the entire sheet, I believe, is on page 37 and 38 of that large concept book.
Does anybody want the book? I brought a copy.
We've got electronic copies of everything, so thank you.
And so it really, looked at our, like, what kind of services do we offer, what kind of spaces do we have, programming space, study space, just what those various spaces that the public would want or need. And then just the collection size and the collection density, which I'm not sure if that's an official term, but that's what I'm calling it, is then you're looking at how high is the shelving, how many shelves are you using in that vertical space, and how many books are you putting on each shelf. So, if something's too high, it's harder for a short person to get. If it's too low, it's harder for somebody who doesn't have that ability to bend over. So just looking at all those different things, and then when you look at this spreadsheet, you kind of have that minimum acceptable user friendliness, a moderate, ample, or what FEH calls a hyper user friendliness. So as an example of minimal acceptable user friendliness, it's a mouthful. That would be really your ADA compliance. So making sure that all your aisles between your shelving units are 36 inches. And then you just kind of would get wider from there and shorter and easier to access. So. And then what we discovered kind of through this process was really most of our collections and spaces lived somewhere in between the minimal acceptable user friendliness and then that moderate user friendliness. And as we were going through this process, we really settled on, as a target, trying to get to that ample user friendliness.
So not the hyper, not the living room feel throughout the whole library, because then we'd have to quadruple the building size. And modifying the user friendliness, potentially doing a higher user friendliness in the youth area, and then a lower, still user friendly, but a different user friendliness in the adult section. Okay, our existing building is 53,723 gross square feet, and this includes a basement. Did you know there was a basement? Okay. And it's full of the old cast iron shelves that were previously on the mezzanine. Based on the space needs, the user friendliness, and the anticipated kind of programmatic elements that all go into this, we need just under 72,000 square feet. So how do we make that difference happen? Okay, this is where I really shine, the nerdy part. Condition assessment. We got to tour the building. Architects, structural engineers, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. We toured the inside and the outside of the building, and we identified needs. Those needs are divvied up into urgent, which would refer to anything like water intrusion or life safety. We've got required, which would be code or ADA items, and then we have recommended, which is it's either best practice to do this, or in the long run, if you do this, it will serve you better over time. So the building does require investment. The book drop off of Bluff Street, the space that the books go into is not heated, and the book drop really, it is fire rated. It just needs some improvements to fully meet the air movement, temperature, and fire rating required for that book drop. The roof recently got redone. It's a nice white roof there. There's no overflow drains on that roof. Just, those are somewhat helpful if, say, there's a plugged drain or the water will just start spilling off the building. The mechanical system, has anybody been in the staff-only stairwell right by the elevator there? You have? Okay, you know what I'm talking about the boiler. You walk in there, it's about 1,000 degrees because the vent for the boiler, so if on these days, that's the room that you really want to go into, is that stairwell, because the boiler vents through there and that's just a CMU wall, so the masonry is just radiating that heat into the stairwell, which makes it quite uncomfortable on certain days. And electrically, we've got panels that have regular maintenance. You got to check the breakers and make sure everything is functioning properly. The lighting is outdated. I mean, when the previous renovation happened, LED lights were right on the cusp, and so they were not installed. Best practice would be install LED lights. Anything that fails should become LED. So the building itself requires a total investment of about $1 million. Just for urgent, which is luckily fairly low in terms of the investment amount, and required, that is, I think, some ADA and some boiler items, and then recommended for a total investment of about $1 million. If you're gonna spend that, we wanna spend that wisely. How do we do that? So the public is gonna help us direct those dollars. Is that me or you?
That's me.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Yes, it is. Okay, so really up to this point, I would say library staff and then FEH design staff have had a solid amount of input into this process. And when you're looking at the space and the service collection size needs. But we knew we needed to measure the opinions of staff with the opinions of those that we serve. So we held a series of public input meetings, created this public advisory task force. And this was, they reviewed all of the materials that we had input so far, helped with the design process, what was important to the members of the public, how we could kind of blend all that together into an agreed upon master plan as we were going to move forward. At the very first meeting of the task force, we developed our goals for success. These goals helped drive the process and often helped us refocus if we started to veer too far off from the stated goals. I'm not going to go through all of these line by line, but we did do that at the beginning of every public meeting just as a review, make sure we weren't missing anything as we kept going on.
Just going to note that the library goals that are identified here are 21st century library. It's taking the library we have, it's bringing it into the modern day. We're adding technology. We are improving our wayfinding, but we're still maintaining and respecting the historic character of the building. And then we're trying to partition the loud and the quiet so that if people want quiet space, they can find it.
Okay. One more second here. So and I'll just kind of finish by saying that really, so we addressed kind of the needs of the library with this task force, but we also educated the task force on library usage statistics, which these next few slides are just kind of some of the examples of the data that the task force was able to dig into, ask questions about. So one of the things we showed is this is a heat map of library card holders in Dubuque. From a wide view like this, it appears there's really a high concentration of card holders in the downtown area, and then less so as the kind of the further you scatter out. But when you really zoom into these neighborhoods, what I've seen is really it's kind of every other or every third household has at least one library card holder within all these neighborhoods. And really, I mean, as you get further outside of town, I think homes are a little further apart, so I think it's a little skewed in that. But I mean, you can see where the library's pretty close to right within that, the hottest part of that heat map. So, but is that a condition of because of we're located there, or is it, is it because that's where all the library users are? It's hard to say, or is it because everybody's a little closer together there? It's, how it depends on how you look at it.
This is where it's the coolest,
Yeah.
because it's downtown.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then we had this just kind of statistics that library staff put together every month for the Library Board of Trustees. This one here specifically is just showing some of our circulation count, visitor count, computer and Wi-Fi usage, as well as our makerspace stats. And this particular data that we're looking at here is actually from June, so it'd be the close of the fiscal year. So if you're looking at the year to date for fiscal year 23, that would be our fiscal year 23 kind of end of the year number. So you see like we had about 450,000 items circulate in fiscal year 23. So nice little increase there from fiscal year 22.
Wait,
go ahead.
makerspace.
Sorry. Yeah.
Makerspace. So one of the big things that was raised both by staff and by the public was increasing the makerspace size. It is its usage is much more than we had originally anticipated. Hopefully you guys have tried it. It's usually always packed, so you can see on the right side there, makerspace stats, and we just expect those to go up. Thank you.
This slide, what's the program?
23.
Thank you. So just kind of some of our program statistics, and it's a little bit broken down kind of by the age demographic, has some outreach numbers, what we call reference transactions. You could also be thought of as kind of research assistants, and more kind of in-depth question and answer transactions that go beyond somebody asking about the title of a book. A good example would be the week between Christmas and New Year. I spent a few, probably about good 40 minutes helping a gentleman who, from Chicago, was seeking out information about his birth mother that he had tracked back to being a Dubuque native. And so I was able to find quite a few articles about her in the Telegraph-Herald, the archives that we have access to, and sent him that stuff, which kind of just helped him get a little bit more information as he's trying to track her down. So
Children's program outside.
I want to talk about that next.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this side here breaks down our statistics, our circulation statistics, by that kind of more of the age demographics again. You see the adult, teen, and children. Kind of just compares physical items to digital items as well. And so just kind of one of the things, so we talked, in the previous slide we had some youth programming statistics. Here we've got our circulation statistics, and kind of blending all of that together with our space needs. So one of the things before the pandemic happened, part of our summer youth reading program, we would often bring in 2 or 3 large, what we consider performers that would put on a big show. And because of the meeting room space that we have currently, which sits about, you can probably have about 150 people in there safely, we would have to pay a performer to do something 2, 3, 4 times. So our programming budget would go a little less further. But one of the blessings of the pandemic was we developed a really nice partnership with the Dubuque Arboretum. And so we were able to bring in kind of some higher grade performers to do one presentation out at the Arboretum, and 400 or 500 people could show up all at one time. But one caveat to that is, when we're doing programming out there, we're not getting the door count then at the library, and we're also losing out on some circulation statistics that way, because it's probably less likely that they're going to leave the Arboretum and then come down to the library immediately after to check stuff out. So just kind of, it's a real small example, but it does kind of just show kind of how all these things sort of relate together, make an impact overall of what that looks like. So if we had that larger space where we could accommodate those larger programs, how it would kind of improve the usage in general. So. All right. And then these next 2 slides, these are statistics that we report to the State Library of Iowa, which is based on the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the national statistics that are reported by all libraries. This is kind of looking at size H library are libraries that service populations of 50,000 and more. And I would say, probably the closest 2 cities that, similar population size, but then also have downtown locations would be Waterloo and Council Bluffs. So it just kind of shows, compares, what are those statistics look like comparatively across all those size H libraries. And there's over 500 libraries in Iowa, and they're all kind of grouped into these letter size categories. So with H being the largest of the.
I think we need more books.
Yeah. So, okay, and this is just some of the data we showed at these task force meetings, but we also had a couple of public, all day long public meetings called Spark sessions, and Christy's gonna share what a Spark session is.
So the first thing that we did at our 2 public meetings is inform the public on, what the library condition is, how large it should be, and then at meetings 3 and 4, we had a Spark session or a charrette. Is anybody familiar with the term charrette? Tina, I knew I could count on you. Okay. Everybody's all at the library, bunch of architects. I think we had 6 or more at one point, architects, interior designers, and we were all drawing different library concepts, whether they be at, well, okay, I'll get to that. But we were there for 2 days. It was 2 Wednesdays, And it was really fun. And Nick got a big cookie out of the deal. I'm hilarious. You can see these are pictures from our Spark session. So we were drawing in the back, and then we had, well, at least it looks like but Nick's looking over my shoulder, so I'm sure I was just like making stuff up in that middle photo. But we taped everything up on the wall, we presented to the group, and then we got public input via colored dots on which options people liked that then helped us refine our solutions. And you can see in that book that we handed out, we also got a lot of comments from the public that we incorporated into our designs. So we knew the library size. We were requested to explore multiple sites. So we looked at the former DB&T on Central as a potential site. There was a strong need to look at multiple options to stay on the existing library site. And then we did look at new library, new site, unidentified, based on the general block size of the city, of the downtown area. And then we came up with an option that got general consensus that people liked as a master plan for the library. So the idea is we'd kind of steer our ship that direction. Let's see. And it was important, as Nick mentioned, with that heat map, to maintain a central location. Now, that definition might vary depending on who you ask, but the group did feel it was important to keep the library downtown. I learned a lot about how long it takes you to get various places in Dubuque on the bus as part of the conversations. So option B.1 prime, I'm just gonna call it B1. It's just gonna be shorter for me to say. This is the selected design. Okay, I can't poll the group, can I? Is that allowed in the work session? Did you notice anything like immediately about it that you were like, oh, what's that?
So you're asking us
Yeah.
right now? I'll open it up if people want to mention something.
Oh, I'm sorry, do you have to make a motion or something?
No. Just,
Okay.
it keeps it a little more organized this way, so.
Okay.
We'll just see if anybody.
Just look at that red arrow that says entry. Mm-hmm. Did you notice that? So we are proposing an east entrance off of Locust Street. I was hoping that caught your eye when you looked at these drawings. Now, not everybody looks at plans the same way, but we've got an east entrance. And as part of the discussion with the task force, how do we make the library more identifiable? How do we take that 80s edition and give it some pizzazz? Okay, it's pizzazzy, but we can give it more pizzazz by potentially adding to the north where we've got a little bit of space and providing that east entrance where you can come in at grade so that when you're driving by on Locust, you don't just have to pass on Bluff and see the banners from that direction. So what this does is it maintains the children's collection on the main level, and then it would put new arrivals in the new section of the library to the north. And then it reworks the patron flow, so you would come in from that east entrance to the circulation desk. It would help with wayfinding, and then this would also convert the former garage back into a garage so that you could store materials there, and it adds a second elevator. So staff would be able to use that elevator, and it would probably increase their movement or through the building because they wouldn't have to wait for the somewhat pokey one that's there. I should note, if it's orange, it's existing. If it's purple, it's new, if that helps. So we've got an addition to the north in the 1980s edition, and this would put the adult collection entirely on one level. Right now, the fiction is on the first floor, and the nonfiction and the audiobooks and periodicals and everything are on the second. So it would put it all on one floor. You can see it. We have a sizable collection, and we don't want our shelving to get too high, so there's a lot of shelving, but it maintains the historic art display atrium space. And then sadly, it would take Nick's office and convert that into adult services. And this expands the makerspace. So by pushing that addition to the north, we would also expand the makerspace to the north. Third floor. You might notice there's more purple here. So this adds a third floor to the 1980s edition. In order to get that square footage from that 50-some thousand to the 70, we need to add building. And at this location, we can only go up. We can't go out very far. We're going out as far as we can. So this would put mostly staff in the addition so that the collection is mostly on the first and second floor so that we wouldn't have to increase the cost of staffing. And then staff would circulate through the meeting room space if it's checked out. And so this puts a level above the mezzanine in the historic building for a meeting room. So we would be maintaining the auditorium space as a small meeting room, if I can give that quotes, and then puts an all-purpose room above the mezzanine that would be divisible by 2/3, 1/3. So this would, yeah, it would greatly improve probably staff all in one spot and give them space to work as well. Here's a 3D view. So we just have too much fun at these Spark sessions, and this is a concept of what it could look like. And we've got this jazzy cube, as I call it, the glass cube, that we want to draw the eye. We want to attract people to the library. We want them to pass by and say, that building looks cool. I see people doing fun things in it. I want to go there. The library is an economic driver. This would help us. Here's another view of a different idea. How can we pop out little pieces? Okay. Kevin, our master wizard cost estimator, he's probably laughing at back there, put together conceptual budgets. Because sometimes when people vote, they like to know which option they're voting on and what the price tag might be. I'm sorry, Nick, did I take your slide?
No, you're good.
Okay, because I'm like a train car, I just keep going. You can see that we had different lettered options that all received kind of votes or dots from the members of the public who attended. We had over 60-some separate individuals who attended over the course of multiple meetings. So we did have good input to then leverage into the option B.1, which would have an anticipated conceptual cost of about $13 million. And you can see that somehow, without us saying which one it should be, the public picked the lowest option in terms of cost. So good job, public. They picked a cool option, and based on these projections, the lowest number.
Okay. I'll just kind of show two really quick. These are just kind of a couple other concepts for those options, which I thought they're also really neat. And G specifically was adding part of the library on top of the parking lot that's there, and then you actually have like some space to walk across Bluff Street, which seemed very
And it's not
urban
that
and
much more
fun
expensive based on the numbers.
and it would kind of covered parking for the library as well. There was kind of a lot of neat ideas there. So how feasible it is, I don't know, but it was just a neat design and a neat idea. So just kind of talking about what have we done so far, and then just kind of what some of the potential next steps are. So the FEH design has provided a review of the process, as well as the advisory task force recommendation to the library board of trustees. We're kind of coming to the tail end of our work session with you all tonight, and staff then have kind of been reviewing our current collection, just evaluating various items for updating, removal, kind of getting that sort of what kind of stuff is starting to get outdated, and as we're looking at removing that, like how do we replace that, and looking at what this plan does and making that meld together so we're not trying to duplicate anything. down the
Still
road.
have those atlases and the dictionary stands and, all your fun references?
A few of them,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Got to keep a couple, I guess,
yes.
for posterity.
So then obviously we're going to try and continue to gather further public support. There was an article in January's Julian's Journal about this process. So just kind of trying to keep this into the public's mind a little bit of what our needs are and how we can kind of continue to generate some support for it. We could conduct a fundraising feasibility study, help us identify some funding sources possibly, which, and then whether that's through grants, donations, fundraising campaigns, on behalf of the Board of Trustees and myself and library staff, we would definitely love to see the inclusion of additional square footage for the library in one of the future city council priorities. So it's just kind of what kind of things can we do to keep things moving. We've done a little bit of some of these things, but we're also kind of working on some drafts to kind of some of those elements we feel like we're missing without adding the square footage. So, we're looking at how do we add some of those smaller study spaces within the current building without, adding the square footage. But as we're looking at those possibilities, making sure that we're looking at kind of the long-term vision of what do we eventually want this to look like. So like I said, again, we're not duplicating anything down the road and we're not making decisions that then in 5 years we're like, oh, why did we do this? We're now, it's all going to be reversed. So,
Yeah, nobody wants to take it apart if we just built it. So we want to be wise about those decisions.
yeah, so we're just, trying to consider all the recommendations of the task force, incorporating those plans to make sure that any specific changes we make fit into those larger picture and keep kind of circling back to that goal of making sure that the library is a effective and attractive facility as part of our strategic plan. So other than that, unless do you have anything else?
We did it.
Yeah, okay. So
And we
if
got
anybody has any
time for questions.
comments or questions, and thanks a lot for agreeing to see us tonight.
Thanks for reading the whole booklet and then following along for the work session, and we'll open it for questions.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation and for all the information. It was actually, it was really pretty fascinating to look through. I'm going to ask a question to kick us off, and then I'll open it up for questions here for the council. But I was trying to get it, and I may have just missed it, but do you have a sense of, in your plan, a time frame of what you'd really like to see? Can you remind me what that is? And I apologize if I did miss it.
Now.
That's a nice thing to
right.
say, but how about from a realistic standpoint, what do you think?
That's a really good question because what are those priorities, right? And I think some of those smaller study spaces, I think because of the pandemic, a lot more people are working from home. We get more requests for people who are coming in for whether it's like a telehealth meeting or are looking for a third space or a second space even to do some work from home, or in some situations both partners in the house are working from home now, so they're competing for space, and if they're having meetings, then sometimes they're looking for space. So it's how do we increase some of that? And then the programming space, I think, is always a challenge. Right now, we're often competing with the public that are wanting to use our meeting spaces as well. And sometimes we have to turn people from the public away because we have a library program going on. So, I mean, those are definitely two of the bigger things. But the collection is always kind of a floating scale. I think we mentioned earlier, books on CD. That's kind of a technology that's kind of slowly fading away.
Yep.
And the circulation statistics on those items as well. But it's also not one of our larger collections at this point. And in fact, it's even hard to get a lot of books on CD at this point. So that's just kind of going to eventually go away, but it's kind of designing, like, as we're going through and thinking about it, like, we know that this collection is going to eventually fade away, probably 10, 15 years down the road. You can probably say the same thing about DVDs and Blu-rays as that streaming technology kind of just continues to evolve. So, it's just kind of trying to think strategically of where are we going to put these collections so then that when they do kind of fade away, if nothing's going to replace them, then we can incorporate that space into, we anticipate some growth here. So do we put it, near a makerspace? So we know this is really going well, that potentially we could expand the makerspace as this collection shrinks, and just looking at those types of things.
Gotcha.
I don't think we have a firm timeline, other than there's an interim that Nick
Yeah.
was just talking about that's in what do you think, that's like a less than 5-year time horizon?
Yeah,
Potentially,
sure.
I don't know, I'm just throwing out a number, I'm asking you.
Could be.
We didn't pre-rehearse this
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
But the master plan is longer than that.
Gotcha.
So,
So it might be, is it accurate to state that we're a little early in the process to have the timeline really firmed up to be able to say, we would like this, we're really looking at like this is a master 5-year, 10-year plan, that kind of thing?
I mean, but
We've got some short-term needs that you've identified pretty specifically, but
back
back to the next steps?
Yeah.
There we go.
if you would, in the mic too, please, we'd appreciate it, yeah, so people at home, huge crowd at
And
home.
Kevin Epperly. We're working with about 20 libraries right now, anywhere from conceptual design to fundraising to some that are under construction that'll be complete soon. A project of this size, what we typically see is one of the next steps is a fundraising feasibility study. That can take 4 months to 6 months. That just basically identifies how much funding can we raise. Once that's complete, we typically step back and say, okay, we may not be able to achieve this entire master plan. How do we divide this into phases? There might be a phase that's 2 years out, there might be one that's 5 years out, there might be one that's 8 years out. That's typically what we would see when we're basically doing a renovation and expansion within an existing footprint. It typically starts with adding more space. Whether that space takes place above the mezzanine, because you essentially have a 3-story open space there, or happens in the front of the building to create that new entrance on the east side. We have a library that faces north. You can only see that entrance from the Stout House. Why the library was ever built that way, I'm not sure, but 120 years ago, I'm sure it was very logical. So we're trying to capture presence with that kind of front entrance and provide an entrance at grade. If you walk on that sidewalk and look into the library, you'll notice that the sidewalk and the library floor are at the same elevation, but for some reason it goes up higher and then you go down a ramp to come in. It's really kind of silly. I wasn't part of the design team in 1980.
Oh, I thought you were.
I was not. I was in high school then. But at this point, it'd be a really easy way to capture space and eliminate the ice and water, stormwater issues that you have in the building. So you capture space out front, that frees up another area to move around. So we saw this plan as a really good one that allows itself to be many phases. So it might be a 10-year plan to accomplish all these pieces. It might take 15 years to accomplish all these things. But the first phase is probably within 3 years, if that answers the question.
It does, and it's actually really helpful because, and just real quick before I open it up, I can almost see the headline. Library asked for $13+ million for renovation. You know what I mean? And I want to make it clear that there's a timeline here. We're not talking about like next year, we need to spend $13 million to renovate the entire library, as nice as that would be for anyone who's really involved, right? But I think it's really important that we point that out very openly, to be able to say, this is a much bigger project that we're looking at, and there's a timeline to it, and there are steps that we could take that could make improvements along the way. So I wanted to state that very clearly, so we can maybe head off the library asked for $13+ million, because if it is a project that is that large, then that's the reality. But the reality is also that there's some time that we could work towards something like that to be able to get that done realistically. Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it. So, questions, comments? Yeah, Ms. Roussel.
Thank you. I think this is really exciting because I've used the library since I was in grade school, going down there to do my homework, and this is an exciting opportunity. I was wondering if we need more space, have we looked at any off-site uses for maybe non-programming sorts of things? For example, if some of our staff move out of their building, the IT building that's right downtown, and moved out to the new 911 center, would that open up space? And I guess, I don't know if this is a question for you or Mike, but it's a really iconic old building, and perhaps it could be utilized for some programming or staff needs. Just a question or a thought.
Can I answer that?
I guess I'm not sure I'm familiar with which building the IT staff are in. Are they in, is it the annex building?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've been in a couple of rooms in that space.
But you currently have off-site space at the mall.
Well, no,
with
not
the
right now.
bicycle. Well, you have had recently.
It's, yeah, I mean, so, I mean, we did study what's the term? I'm having
Satellite?
the satellite branch as part of this process a little bit. It's just the kind of the cost. You know, obviously, if you're open the same hours, you're going to have some increased staff costs with that, you know, between the two different buildings. So, you know, that's a long-term bigger expense probably than a addition to a building. So I guess it just kind of depends on, you know, and I think that was all kind of.
We did operating
really-
cost
yeah.
comparisons of each of these options as well. For example, one FTE for the library is about $57,000 a year. And we always look at everything over 20 years because that's kind of the lifespan of a project for a public library. Well, that's well over $1 million for one FTE. So whenever we see those numbers, people immediately say the operating cost is just out of hand. If we could expand and provide the service with some improved parking, and we heard parking, like you always hear at the library. On a day like today, nobody wants to walk more than about 20 feet to get to the door, or on a really hot day. But we spent a lot of time studying parking, and we looked at the lot that is just west of the building and said, you know, here's a potential solution. You know, that could be a totally independent project. You've got a parking lot that's only using about 40% of the footprint of the property that the city owns there, and you've got two roads that connect a level up and two levels up. The road that comes down, you could bring that right into a structured level of parking, and then the road at the top could be another structured. So you don't lose anything with ramps. You could just build a deck and a deck and a deck and add 60, 70 parking spaces there. You know, those are the kinds of things that we kind of looked at as pieces of the puzzle that could help solve some of those access issues. And a lot of people just, maybe they don't come to the library because they have to walk 3 blocks from a parking ramp. I don't know, but we've heard those comments from the public meetings.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
Well, I appreciate your focus on the downtown Carnegie-Stout library structure. I've said this before a number of times. I don't think I could ever support a satellite location for the reasons that you just mentioned. The operating costs are high, but the reality in Dubuque is that nothing's more than 10 minutes away from anywhere. Our downtown is safe and friendly, and those two reasons keep some people away from downtown. So I'm all for having the very best downtown library that we can have. But I would draw the line in supporting an off-site facility because it costs more to staff, it costs more to operate it, and it dilutes the potential of service that you could provide in the one spectacular building. So thank you for showing us a spectacular building and a good plan. I agree that the feasibility study will define the timeline pretty significantly. You know, you've got to know where the dollars are and where they're coming from. And for those that aren't connecting those dots, a feasibility study is talking about private donations typically. And that's a great partnership. If we can do that in this community, and I suspect that we can. Bigger projects have happened, and this is an exciting project that has a lot of people's hearts. So I think your feasibility study will bring back some pretty good news and some pretty good ideas. So best of luck moving forward with it, and of course keep it in front of us because you're going to need some help from the city of Dubuque. As you've probably been reading, we're looking down the barrel of a couple of the worst budget years ever to try and just keep the lights on and keep moving forward in essential services. So we may have to reach a little bit to figure this out. But we're with you, and we'll be talking about you in goal setting in August, and make sure that you keep that in front of us so that we are talking about it. Now, if we talk about goal setting, I got to talk about the fact that we typically start that day looking at 60 or 70 things that would all be fabulous for the city of Dubuque if you could do them, and you can't. And not being selected as one of the top 10 isn't a badge of dishonor. It isn't a badge of a bad idea. It is just where we ran out of space. It's where we ran out of cash. It's where we ran out of capacity for the staff to operate. And it doesn't mean that it falls away and it's forever gone. It's still on our radar. It's still something we want to work with. So I don't know how it'll do in goal setting. I don't know what those other 70-some things will look like, or how attractive or necessary they'll be. But that's the reality of how that goal-setting process, that agonizing 3 days that we're going to spend in August looks. But make sure that your case is in our minds as we go in the door for it. Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah, we want one of those big red dots on the radar, like the big blip, not a little bit blip. So make us a big blip.
Ms. Farber.
Yeah, thank you. I want to just extend what Mr. Jones has said, and you had talked about population growth and how important that is for our city. And the downtown corridors are extremely important to that growth and to the amenities, the social amenities, the athletic amenities that we can provide. So this was very pleased to see that the choice was to do a little bit of Louvre action, from the French, where you have something very modern with something that's very classic as well in the design. I think it's kind of a fun one, and I agree that it will bring attention to that part of the city. But I just wanted to thank you for keeping it within the downtown corridor, and that I think it's very important that as we build apartment housing and other kind of amenities downtown, that it'll just focus right into and follow into all the other things that are happening down there. So great studies, good luck with the continuation of it, and thank you for sharing.
Mr. Resnick.
Thank you. So I appreciate where the entrance is now, just because I used to drop off kids and I like it when it's an off-road and it's a low, instead of having, people whizzing by. So I get why the entrance is where it is now. So it's just a little more calm for kids in and out. Did I understand you right? Did you say the entire third floor would be used for staff?
Not the entire, it was, I think there was a lot of meeting room space up there. And then, that would,
The third floor addition.
I think the addition would just be staff offices. So then we would reappropriate. Right now, there's a lot of staff offices on the second floor and first floor. So all that would just move up to the third floor, use that first and second floor primarily for public space.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because of the 16,000 square foot addition, we'd only have 4,000 used for public. And you're saying that, no, just the part that's out in front, it would be probably staff rooms.
Yeah, I think, can we go back to?
One of the real goals was to recapture the space that's on first and second, that staff space that isn't directly interacting with the public.
Yeah.
So that we can keep the public on 2 floors and not increase the staffing cost to manage the public on 3.
So, and I'll just point out, so like if you're looking at this, the second floor here, I think pretty much where that, it's kind of hard to tell the
It
color.
looks different on this screen.
There we
than
go.
this.
We want to look at third floor or second floor?
Second floor. I was just gonna say, like the back half of the addition part of the building, the lower half, really, that's all staff space right now. So, and then in this design here, that would all become public space for collection, with the exception of where the stairwell and a new elevator would be, so.
So it's fair to say that most of the addition would be public use.
Yeah, the idea would be that, first and second floor would be pretty much, we would get rid of most of the staff space right now that's on those and reappropriate all that for public use and try and get all the staff up to that third floor where.
Great. And I was down at the library today. Staff were very helpful. It's a great place. I hope more people can visit that facility. It's great. I'm glad we have it. It's great for Dubuque. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
All right, thank you. Probably time for one or two more. Mr. Sprank, go ahead.
Thank you for bringing all this wonderful information. You guys have mentioned libraries. As a contractor, I've worked with you guys on the DeWitt project where you took a existing library, added a big addition onto that, and that came out wonderful. I know I've got a contract to work with another general on the wonderful Cascade project. So that whole new where you basically, it was over budget, but then you guys redesigned it and came back, and so that's a whole brand new library.
Made
So
it bigger and saved $1 million.
there you go,
Yeah.
made it bigger. So when this can go, all the stars can align. I like the fact that you've figured out how to take existing part of the building and keep that historical aspect, as well as adding on something new and fresh. So yeah, hopefully when this can all happen, we'll be able to help you. So thank you.
Ms. Wethel.
Well,
Well, the most sustainable building is one that's already built. So the fact that we're utilizing the beautiful space that we have and adding to it space that's going to be more user-friendly, it makes sense. The financial piece that Mr. Jones brought up does, of course, give us pause, but it's going to give us pause about everything that comes to council moving forward. And I think the idea that we're able to phase it is very appealing to me in order for me to wrap my head around a long-term goal. I met my first friend coming back to Dubuque as an adult at the library when I took my child there for story time. It's a very special place because I felt like I found a space that I could meet people. And so the non-reading areas and gathering spaces I value very much because that was, for me, very important. The reiteration of goal setting and phasing. I love the entrance idea, and I don't know if was that phase one then would be an entrance idea, or is that too early to say?
It could be.
It could be phase one. When we went through this process and established the goals and what people liked, we got a prioritization from the public. What was most important to them? Believe it or not, parking was one of those top three things. And an accessible entrance, which you already have. The elevator is a challenge for some people, not sure why that is, but they wanted more big meeting space. So the first phase might be creating that big meeting space that's in the kind of atrium with the mezzanine, because it's almost a three-story space in the dimensions that you would use today. So that might be a first phase. The parking structure might be a first phase. That entrance with the public space out front might be a first phase. So we got some options, and I think a lot of that can be driven, and typically is on our projects, by the fundraising feasibility, where the donations come from. So the most donations come from, we need more parking, we might focus on that as a first phase. But an expansion piece should really be a first phase that gives the library room to start that domino effect of moving things around.
And something visible that people are like, oh, my donation dollars are right there at work. That's important.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think this has been a very far-reaching conversation and a good one, too. So thank you very much for bringing this to us with all the detail that we have now that the public can see, and looking forward to continuing that conversation publicly. And hopefully we can start to see some things move in a direction that works for everybody. So thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you for tonight, everybody. Thank you.
There being no further business in the work session, we will be adjourned.